Here's the next topic, and this is actually coming from a viewer. Okay, this guy right here named Steve Orellana, right? And he asked us,
for the comments, man.
Hey, thanks, Steve. I appreciate that. Thanks for watching and supporting. And here was your question. If it's up to you, where do we go from here? So when you're talking about the Sony universe, and I'm gonna go ahead and pop up the little icon there for Sony Pictures. I don't know where you go from here. I honestly don't. I think that they have not started out in a good spot. And I think there's a lot of different ways they can go with this, but I don't know, like, what's their next move? Obviously, they're going to be bringing in Kraven, but I think right now Sony has to be saying, okay, everybody gather around, everybody get in the boardroom, get around the big table, and let's talk about this movie that we just dropped. Are we doing the right things by this thing? So we got to get into this. T, what do you think Sony needs to do next? Like, what is their next move? You're in the boardroom right now. You're at Sony Pictures. You're sitting at the big table with all of the big wigs, the executives who are obviously the ones making decisions. Like, what's the first thing you need to tell them to make sure that this thing is on the right track?
First thing I do is I pull a move that I'm always telling you about. I go hard with the villains. I go hard with the villains, really, really hard, because I know who the hero is. The buildup is the hero is Spider-Man. But I've got 22 years of Spider-Man in between that. I want the villains. I want to be head up by Norman Osborn. The villains. I want to see what they said they were going to do. I want to see Madam Web. I want to see the Beyonder. I want to see all of the things that are super cool, man. I even want to see, what would be really cool just to play with this thing? I want to see somebody in Stan Lee concept saying, hey, man, I'm drawing in this universe and I'm drawing you, right? Or Steve Ditko there. Hey, we're coming up with this idea, man. It already had legs, and then you spread. Sell the story, D. I want story. I want to see them go in where they're saying, hey, man, this is over here. This is happening, and all these things are collectively happening on different continents or different cities or different parts of New York to get to this one guy. There's only one guy that can get to it, and he's got to figure it out. I mean, one thing I think that's not being played up is how smart Peter Parker is. He's a freaking genius, man.
Yeah, you know what I mean? He is.
You need to play that up. Don't do any of these things like making the lizard be some 8-foot tall lizard. Like, make him be like, make him be. Don't make him like Godzilla. Make him be a man that is like lizard-like, and like that's more interesting to me.
Right.
Do things that are more seamless and not this thing where I'm like, man, what is happening here, man? Why this just doesn't make any sense? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Stop trying to humanize villains. They're villains for a reason.
Yeah. I agree, man. Like, I think there's a lot that they could do with the villains. Obviously, like, again, we're gonna get to this too. And thanks again, Steve, for that comment. They were already talking about a Sinister Six movie and how Morbius sets up the future of Sony's Spider-Man universe. So, like, it's obvious that the villains are the focal point, right? Because you only really got one hero. You got to kind of, got a couple of anti-heroes, kind of, towing a line between villainy and heroism. But most of this is about Spider-Man, and so if you got a Spider-Man and he's the main hero, then everything around him is probably going to be a villain or some form of an anti-hero. So that's what we were supposed to be getting with Morbius, right? Morbius is supposedly an anti-hero. I don't really look at Morbius as an anti-hero. I look at him as a villain. That's what he's pretty much been for the most of his comic runs, and every time you see him, there's some kind of like, he's a vampire, he's kind of messed up his life, but for the most part, this guy's a villain, right? That's what he's always been. So I'm gonna come in here and I'm just gonna talk about this one question, which says, one question Sony will need to address at some point, however, is why Morbius would agree to be a part of this little cabal, the Sinister Six, right? Vulture and Kraven are long-standing Sinister Six members in the comics dating back to the very first incarnation of the team, but Morbius is generally portrayed as an ally to Spider-Man. Even in the movie, Leto's character is painted in a relatively heroic light right up until his meeting with Toomes. So that's what I'm saying. Like, I've never seen this guy, like, it says here, yeah, he's been portrayed as an ally of Spider-Man, but I've never seen him as much more than just kind of like the secondary character. It's like, okay, where do we go with Morbius? Like, how do you get Morbius to get plugged in to, a Sinister Six kind of concept? You still got, Mysterio possibly that you can bring back. You have who's the other one? You got the Vulture, obviously. You got Shocker. We saw him in Homecoming. You have you have you have Electro as well, but you got Scorpion as well. So you got a couple of villains that you can kind of plug into this Sinister Six. You know, what do you see as far as the lineup is concerned? Who should they put in this thing?
I like Adrian Toomes. I like Doc. Obviously, Doc Ock.
Doc Ock.
I would love to see. I would like to see Electro, just like they kind of did in the last No Way Home. You know, like that was
Mm-hmm.
that was a great lineup. They were just missing a few other characters. Like they were
Right.
just, you know, obviously you want to see what's his name? They're gonna make the movie about him, man. Kraven the Hunter. I would
Kraven,
love to see
sure.
him. I would love to see him be there. I would love to see. I would love to see Red Skull in that dude, because I grew up on the cartoon in the '90s, man. Super great. That was one of the only Spider-Man they had that actually looked like a man, Spider-Man. He was buff. He was a big dude. You know, he was swing on webs, man. He'd be like, dude, I'm not screwing around with that dude. He was strong, and he was solving everything, man. And he was just such a thoughtful hero. You know what I mean?
Right.
Kind of reminds you of somebody. Kind of reminds you of somebody else who's a thoughtful. I mean, it's just. I would like to see. I don't really know. To be honest with you, you got me stumped there.
Yeah. Okay.
I really don't know anything beyond who I've already seen.
Right.
He's got so many great characters because he's got Sony bought all of his villains.
Yeah.
Like he's
pretty much.
Every last one of his villains.
They own it all, man. They own everything.
They own everything, so they can play with this thing, man, and they can just make them. I would love to just put them on a different planet and just see them war. I want to see them warring, man, where they
on a different planet.
I want to see them on a different planet. There's an episode, great episode, man, Spider-Man 90 series, man, dude, where he has to go on another planet and save people, and like he has to work with people he doesn't even know, man, to defeat this problem and it's just such a great episode, man. It's like a series, dude. He's such a unique character, man.
Yeah.
Because he's probably the most humanistic superhero you're going to get.
He connects with people a lot. I think that's why what makes him popular is that, you know, everybody can kind of relate to Spider-Man. You know, he's a kid that, you know, is trying to live double lives, and he's trying to do this, but also trying to be a hero. He's trying to go to college. He's trying to just have a girlfriend, have a family, but he's also trying to be a superhero. People can kind of relate to, you know, getting pulled in two different directions, I think. I think that Sony, and just in my opinion, I think that, you know, if I was the guy sitting at the table and I'm like, look, let's clear the decks right now. Okay, you got Kraven coming up. It's already in production. We can't do anything with that. Here's what we need to do. Okay, we need to start thinking about who is our lineup and how we're going to introduce these particular characters into the universe. That's step number one, okay? So get your lineup together. If you're bringing back Mysterio, you kind of got him already in place. Okay, cool. We can bring Mysterio back. I'm not necessarily saying but he's a great villain, but then I'm not necessarily saying they have to, but they got to figure out who, you know, if you're going to bring Mysterio back, bring him back. Okay, we already got him introduced. Who's next? Okay, so maybe that's like, okay, we got 4 members right there. Okay, we got Vulture, we got Morbius, we got Kraven, and then you got Mysterio. Are you going to bring back Doc Ock? All right, and if you do, are you getting Alfred Molina to play him, right? So you don't get Alfred Molina, you get a different guy to play Doc Ock?
The great thing about No Way Home, they introduced different universes, so you can get a whole new version. It's so like this thing with Marvel's grand idea, what they're playing with is it's a broad stroke thing, man. And it's a thing of genius because they can bring in their MCU characters into the Sony universe and take them out, and it's just such a good. It's trying to get to a level playing field. You could bring in a Fantastic Four. You know what I mean? You could bring in a lot of characters. You're like, man, what is going on here? You know what I mean? And you don't even have to explain at this point, you don't need to explain their origins.
I don't know about that, T. I think you always got to do a good origin story to bring fans. A lot of people ain't going to know anything about some of the characters that they're going to bring in.
That's what the comic books are for. That's why that's what the comic book genre needs that. They need you to do research, not homework, but research to say, hey, you know what, man? Let me check that out. They've got the springboard for that with social media and all these other things. You can get me interested in it, man. I knew nothing about the Peacemaker, man. But you know what? Dang, let me read up on this dude. Oh, this is not the version of him. Oh, Vigilante, man, this dude is great, man. Give me more. In the world of content today,
that would be the smart way to go about it, right? You know, you use the movies and the television shows to kind of rebuild your comic universe and get everybody excited about that. I said that with DC Universe when they had that streaming service, you know, I thought that was genius, because it's like we got all of these great shows on there, and now we're just going to connect that right to the comic universe. Unfortunately, they pulled the plug on it and just said, hey, we're just going to do comics. We're going to push everything over to HBO Max.
DC Universe, man. You were one of the biggest proponents, man. And you know what? And you got me into it, because the fact that you can read up on those comic books right there, that was awesome, dude.
That's smart, right? It's smart, but it doesn't seem like anybody's trying to do that. So it's like, hey, I guess it didn't work. DC tried it. Maybe it didn't work. I think it worked. I thought it was a really smart idea. And I thought if they did everything that they could have did, you know, we're kind of getting off the subject a little bit, but if they did everything they could have did to really promote that universe, that streaming service, I think they would be doing much better in the comics. That's just my opinion.
I'm going to tell you how it ties in. It ties in because I know we're going to move on to the next subject, but let me just end with this. Stan Lee, back in the early 2000s, he saw the vision of the internet. He said, man, I'm going to put these webisodes on. You know, he did that early back in the day, man. He was a genius about that, man.
Stan Lee has been a genius he was a genius, man. He understood the way how to sell obviously characters, but then also how to sell concepts. And so the internet was a big deal, you know, to say, hey, we're just going to launch these little, like you said, the webisodes, and just really tie people in, you know, connect to people that we can't reach with just the comics, because some people just like, hey, I'm not reading comics, but I'm online and I'm looking at this and I'm like, oh wow, what's this? This is awesome.
He was first to do it. So I'm just saying, DC, not that they're copycats, but Stan Lee was first that I know of to do that.
All right, folks, what do you think about the Sony universe? We kind of got off topic with that, but what do you think about the Sony universe? Are they building this thing out right? We got Kraven the Hunter coming up next. After that, we don't know. You know, is this thing going in the direction that you like, with Venom, with Morbius, with Kraven coming up on deck? Jump down in the comments. Let us know what you think. All right, T, we gonna move.